Welcome to the All American Otaku Show. Today is a very good subject, in my opinion, about villains in anime and manga. The idea of a villain is a obstacle for the heroes to come who have mixed ideas. Sometimes ideas you agree with, sometimes you don't. Villains have come a long way in social media because usually when it comes to media, villains are just given the name evil queen or one-sided things that you can't really sympathize or go on to their side, which doesn't make a very effective villain. Villains have evolved into the idea of almost as important, if not more important, than the heroes themselves. Being a wrestling fan, there is always the idea of heroes and villains, white hat, black hat, so good versus evil. But now, how villains are portrayed is the line of villains is not easy to explain or easy to fixate on. We're going to talk about various different villains from various different anime, from good to bad to villains with extreme plots. I'm going to talk about the villains in anime, while my partner, Mr. Pat, is going to talk about the villains in manga. We did a poll with four villains because YouTube only allows you to do four polls. It was Frieza, Griffith, Aizen, and All for One. I'm not going to tell you right off the bat who took number one or who took last, even though very few people did vote for it. We'll explore that later after I talk about the various other villains. The first villain I'm going to talk to you about is none other than Don Flamingo. Or Don Flamingo. He was a former celestial dragon, former seven warlords of One Piece, and one of the toughest fights for Luffy. He has the ability to manipulate people, controlling them on strings and so forth. He's highly intelligent, has superhuman strength, really strong on manipulating the situation and this thing. He's practically a slaver, worst kind of a person. And eventually, Luffy defeats Don Flamingo, and Don Flamingo ends up being put in a prison through the admirals and so forth. He tries to turn in Luffy, he tries to manipulate more situations. This is a highly strong and powerful villain in its own right and really set the tone of the series One Piece. A villain that Luffy barely defeated and barely found the aspect of who Don Flamingo really was. The next villain is also from One Piece I'm going to talk to you about is Blackbeard. Blackbeard in real life was a real life pirate who would light his beard on fire, creating smoke, creating an illusion as this guy from evil and hellscape individual. Blackbeard in this is in one of the few pirates who have two devil fruits, and one of the fruits is to negate other people's devil fruits. He has the ability to manipulate shadows and darkness. He ends up betraying his own pirate crew that he used to be part of called Whitebeard, which led to Whitebeard's death and which led to Portuguese Ace's death, which was a major point for Luffy and setting him on the path where he was. And the idea that piracy and friendship sometimes goes into a more grisly end. The next one I'm going to talk to you about is Medusa from Soul Eater. Medusa is a female villain, which you don't see a whole lot of those in anime. She manipulates the system by controlling her son, Chrono, to the point where he was abused and wanted to destroy the world that he was coming there, eventually feeling depressed and even fused the weapon into him. So when the weapon comes out to its normal form, it's part of him called Ragnarok. She uses her magic and manipulation trying to destroy the Soul Society and eventually release a demon or a Kachkan into the world and try to bring the world down into its knees. She manipulated the situation. Not only did she manipulate her own son, she also manipulated several of the characters like Maka, Soul, Death the Kid, and Black Star to figure out and to go to work. And it ends up in this huge battle between the two, between her and Stein. Stein using his abilities for threading, and her using the abilities of manipulation and magic as a witch. She is a very effective villain because she You could almost sympathize with her, a mother, and trying to change and manipulate the situation, but the way she's about doing it is very wrong and very evil in its own right. And the idea that she abused and used her own son as a tool shows you how truly evil she truly is. The next anime I'm going to talk to you about is from the list. The first one who took the last place, even though it was a three-way tie for last place, is Griffith. Griffith is an anime villain who, at first, you think is a hero trying to do the right and fight for the justice in this dark fantasy thing. Befriends, well, you think he befriends Guts, as well as befriends the female lead in the character. And eventually it leads on to war fighting demons and fighting various different people from other nations and stuff that are trying to take over the lands. But you eventually find out that he is had a whole plan to control their and siding with the demons themselves, kill chopping off Griffith's arms and sacrificing his own people, into the idea of even raping the female lead into there, and shows that he is truly is an evil and disrespectful and things that he is truly about himself rather than the whole society as a whole, and wants to further his power and ambitions while sacrificing all the people who trusted and loved him before. The second one I'm going to talk about is from the anime Dragon Ball Z. Very classic villain known as Frieza. He is a planet destroyer. He is a manipulator. He goes in there and destroys and captures planets and sells them off to various different higher alien races. Frieza manipulated the situation and even kills a character called Krillin. And he's manipulated the situation so much to see the Super Saiyan, thinking he's invincible and he could defeat a Super Saiyan. And that's where Goku lost his mind and becomes angry and violent and gets the yellow hair and becomes a Super Saiyan. Frieza manipulated the Saiyan saying to work for him to try to take over other planets and manipulated things, a warrior race, to the point he manipulated Vegeta. And then Vegeta finds out what Frieza actually did and tries to fight him. And Frieza actually destroys the planet Vegeta and kills all that Vegeta, Goku, and everything else well known about the Saiyans, thinking it was an asteroid strike or what have you, manipulated the situation and as well as the various different aliens and things there. Frieza is a manipulator and very evil being and all about his own ambitions and self and looking for immortality through the Dragon Balls and killing Nameks and eventually destroying planet Namek. But Frieza eventually becomes a good guy. And the next villain, this wasn't on the list, I'm going to talk to you about, and I forgot to put on there earlier, sorry, is Madara. Madara is he wants the idea of peace so you can almost relate to him, but he goes it through force and manipulation to take over the whole ninja world themselves, which is conflict of Naruto, who wants to become more peace and more justice and more honor. Madara doesn't really have that major sense of honor, but he has the more sense of control. Gets Obito bringing various different villains and heroes and people have fallen back and former Hokage to try to go into this huge war, into huge manipulation. The fact that he kills and starts this huge conflict where he had various ninjas that weren't on their side join there to try to fight him. His comes to an end where the ruler of Chakra comes in, destroys him, and he ends up being betrayed there. Like a lot of villains are betrayed by their own subordinates or betrayed by their own people. Shows the sincerity of history. The next one, back onto the list where I'm going to talk to you about, is All for One. All for One's from the hit anime My Hero Academia. He manipulates the situation with the villains and putting his own ideals where he truly only wants his brother and truly wants his brother back. The reason he comes in there. Madara is not Madara, but All for One ends up being almost a lonely guy. He manipulates Shigaraki so he could take over his body and take over his mind and take over his powers, and manipulates other villains. One Spinner, who's a beast type quirk, to you have to get revenge on the things, always pulling the strings from behind. And he ends up fighting All for One or All Might. They end up punching there. He goes into prison. Then he manipulates a way to break to the prison. And to the final, actually, scene when Deku fights a form of All For One over Shigaraki's body, and even saying, "You're not the Demon King. You're just a lonely old man." This leads into the anime that villain that took them number one on the list. The last one we're going to talk about is none other than the winner of the poll, Aizen. Aizen seems like he is a good man, honor just, loves his crew and treats his crew with respect and honor and everything else. But we find out later on that's a facade. His real plan is to control and destroy everything. The idea to go for his own prejudice against the Quincy's, even faking his own death and going against his own crew and himself and trying to kill their, which leads to the fight he has with Ichigo, the main character of Bleach, where they fight and eventually Ichigo wins. This is one of the top villains. He goes for his manipulation, change of personality, as well as the epic fight. This villain is epic on many things and deserved to win the poll as people's top favorite villain. This villain is very charismatic, very manipulative, really strong on power, to the idea you don't even know where he was going and where he goes there. Very must see villain in Bleach. Very must see there. Thank you. And here's Mr. Pat on his manga review.
Doing one of my subjects this time around, and it's villains and minds of villains in manga. So, what makes villains interesting as far as story goes is they drive usually the main story forward. Like usually make the hero shine, but not always right away. They're usually the antagonists of the story, and sometimes they're the heroes that go the wrong path. So I have a small list here of villains that I choose from that are kind of iconic. So the one I chose just was one of them was Vinland Saga. Uh, the main villain in this one was called Askeladd. Now this guy is kind of multifaceted himself because he's like he's part of the scheme of killing the main hero's dad, and then the main hero swears vengeance on him, but the whole time he's actually teaching him lessons and stuff and egging him on and stuff, and expect him to fail. And in the middle of the story, or I think it's kind of near a quarter of the story, he actually dies, and not by the hero's hands, but by him trying to take the seat of the king, and he got killed right there, and caused the main hero to really question himself. So again, it drives home the character. Other one I chose was Degree Man. The main villain in this one is the Millennium Earl, and he's a lot more when he seems, as far as without giving out too much spoilers, but he's like the main driver for everybody to fight against, because he's the one that creates these things called Akuma, and they're the main issue that causes strife in the land. And he actually has a human face, but for the most part he has this demonic looking face, and it's really messed up. The next one is more of a hero, but slash slightly mass murderer in Death Note, like Yagami. He's not really a great guy. He's really a typical school guy, but ultimately when he gets power, the old adverb is great. Overwhelming about the effect of so much power so much quickly, corrupt you absolutely. And his was the Death Note himself. And he ended up killing a few people at a time, and eventually he deemed himself as a god because people said so, and he just ran with it and believed everything that was as a god. His ending was not so pretty, but we'll leave that out of the way here. The one that also I chose was in Full Metal Alchemist. There's quite a bit of them, but we'll go with one that is really well known. King Bradley. He's the official king. Everyone thinks he's a really nice guy, and he actually fools everybody into believing he's a really nice guy. But as far as the whole group of the sins of the group, he's wrath, and oh my gosh, he's a beast. He's really good at his job, and no one believes him for a villain until like halfway through the story, and then they're like, "Oh yeah," and they can't quite put him away because he's still in charge of the power, and everyone believes him. But once they reveal the curtains, it reveals that you need to get rid of him. The next one I chose, and it's slightly more pro-tag, but still kind of a tag a bit, Tanya the Evil. Tanya herself. She's started out as, it's an isekai one, and she started out as this co-worker guy, sub-boss that treated his people like crap, and they pushed him into a train because he just couldn't handle it and killed him right there. So he reincarnates in the isekai form as a gender bender as this Tanya, and she's like super magic, but it's kind of reminiscent of German Nazis, but not quite there yet. It's kind of the Great War or World War One, but it's magic based and flying and stuff. It's really brutal. All these characters that they drive the home. Like I said, villains make the thing keep meshing and keep going the story. This is Mr. Pat.
Welcome to the show where anime dreams come alive. Let's go! All American Otaku vibe, diving deep into the anime tide. From the screen to the page, we're turning every stage. All American Otaku where worlds collide. From the 90s till now, the passion's been real. Anime and manga, it's how we feel. Conventions and scenes, cooking up dreams. Japanese culture bursting at the seams. From the 90s till now, the passion's been real. Anime and manga, it's how we feel. Conventions and scenes, cooking up dreams. Japanese culture bursting at the seams. All American Otaku feel the vibe, diving deep into the anime tide. From the screen to the page, we're turning every stage. All American Otaku where worlds collide. I'm there and Mr. Pat by my side. Exploring every genre, let's take that ride. From action to drama, it's all here. Community strong, let's make it clear. Otaku dreams, we're chasing the light.